You are listening to the International Radio Report. Your reactions are much appreciated. Feel free to send them to radioreport@yahoo.com. That is, radioreport@yahoo.com. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the International Radio Report for Sunday, June the 12th. My name's Sheldon, and I am here with Jill. We thank you for joining us today. If you'd like to reach us, our email address is radioreport@yahoo.com. We're live streaming and archived at ckut.ca. Our Facebook group is International Radio Report. We have a bunch of new members this week. We welcome Cal, Abdul, Boris, Danielle, Marco, and Carmen. That gets us almost at 800 members. So if you have not joined our Facebook group yet, we suggest that you go there and join in with the group. Lots of good information on the Facebook page for you. We have the show archived on our YouTube channel as well. You can find us at International Radio Report on YouTube, where we've got 657 subscribers. So as usual, we have 30 minutes of news and information of things going on in the world of radio, both here locally and around the world. And we'll start things off today with a little bit of a discussion on the spring Numeris radio ratings for our city, the city of Montreal. We'll put up a link where you can go and check some of the other cities in Montreal as well. This ratings numbers cover the period of February the 28th, 2022 through May the 29th, 2022. And it's interesting, they're covering it for a full 24-hour period, 7 days a week. I don't know if they used to do that all the time. Usually they didn't pay a lot of attention to the overnights, but it seems that they're doing the full week now on a 24-hour-a-day basis. So maybe a little more detailed information this time. And Montreal is produced, numbers are produced in Montreal Anglo and Montreal Franco numbers, of course, with the two languages in Quebec here, and having independent English and French radio stations. So I guess to summarize it quickly, the trend seems to be talk radio, both in English and French, being the popular stations.
Yeah, pretty much. We were talking just before we started recording about how we have the impression that some of the music stations are losing ground in the listening. And, of course, one of the things we thought that could be a competition to music radio is streaming services. More and more of us are leaving the radio to go to streaming services for music. But we kind of listen to the radio when somebody's talking, so the talk shows are popular. It's interesting to note also that, take like the Anglo side, there's 4 stations only that are equal or more than 10% share. All the rest is below. And so that is, you see the dominance of just a few stations, of course, the dominance of CJ80, 800, which is always the popular Anglo station.
Yeah, that's still an incredible number, a 27.3% share, which is 10 points higher than the next closest station, which is surprisingly a music station. It's the Beat 92.5 with a 17.5. But then you drop back to talk radio again with CBC's Radio 1 with 13.6, and I'm sure they're very happy with that number, because CBC has never really done very well, particularly on the English side in Montreal. So coming in with that number, I'm sure they're quite happy. That's the third highest share of all the English language radio stations in Montreal. So 2 of the top 3 being talk radio stations. And we have to talk about poor Virgin Radio. They continue for another ratings period to just fall further and further behind. They're now at 8.8% share. Not really that close. I guess the closest music station there too is Chaume at the rock music station at 10.3. Yeah. But other than that. as you said, the music stations, we don't have the comparative numbers for the previous period, but I'm sure if we go back and take a look, we'll see that a number of these have dropped down a little bit each time as we get new numbers.
One of the things that I think has shifted our radio listening also is with the pandemic happening, and when going through, we needed news and all of that. We get into habits, and I think that those habits have stuck with us. That a lot of people shifted to some talk stations and kind of got used to this is now the new habit. I turn on my talk radio station rather than maybe turning on my favorite music station. It shifted our listening probably. And on the French side, of course, 98.5, which is the dominant Montreal station for talk, and the CBC French also making a nice share here at 16.3. CBC French has always been somewhat popular in the Montreal market, and that is interesting because I always found that surprising that the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation French has always been kind of more popular in general than the Anglo side for the CBC. Interesting numbers to see here, and the talk stations in French also are very dominant, basically.
Yeah, we notice one thing we always look at is the being that CHOM is the only real rock music station in Montreal. We always look at the French percentage of the share of the audience for an English language radio station.
Yep.
And that number for this period is 4.5% share. So, that's not a huge number, but it's a substantial number considering that it's a French audience listening to an Anglophone radio station. So it's really the one station that sort of stands out that does cross over between the languages. The only music station in double digits on the French side is CFGL with a 12.2. So again, that trend of the music stations being lower down the totem pole seems to be happening both in English and French.
Yep. And talking about radio, local radio, we have a morning man that is very popular, Paul Arcand, on 98.5. He actually announced 2 years in advance that he's going to retire. So this is in the Montreal Gazette via Normand Martel. Paul Arcand, host of 98.5 FM's Puisqu'il faut se lever morning show, announced Thursday morning that he'll be leaving the program once his contract expires in 2 years. After sharing the news on Thursday morning that the most recent ratings had once again placed his station and show in first place in Montreal and Quebec, 62-year-old Arcand told his listeners he would not be renewing his contract with employers. Arcand has hosted the morning show since 2004, and his no-nonsense interviewing style and audience reach have made the program a mandatory stop for any politician, entertainer, or newsmaker who wants to get their message out to Quebec. So this is interesting because he's very popular, and a lot of talk radio is driven by personalities. If he goes, that's going to be tough to replace with somebody that needs to keep up the ratings.
It's nice that he's decided to give them a 2-year notice, though, so they've got time to really figure out what they want to do and who they want to place in there, and maybe even get some crossover as his contract comes towards an end, and have the new person maybe come in almost as a co-host, ready to take over. So we'll see how that all plays out over the next 2 years. This is an interesting story now we have from the Montreal Gazette by Morgan Lowry. The F word, mostly okay on French radio songs, says a ruling. It's acceptable in most cases for French radio stations to play English songs containing the F word during the daytime, the Canadian Broadcast Standards Council said Wednesday. In a written decision, the organization said that when the overall programming is in French, only songs where the word is used frequently or to insult someone breach its code of ethics. The Council's Code of Ethics limits the use of the F word on English stations to late evening broadcasts, but notes that the word doesn't have the same vulgar connotation in French. The organization said its French language panel investigated after a listener complained about hearing what she described as violent, vulgar, and sexual language on a Quebec City pop music radio station. The listener acknowledged that the F word is less severe in French, but argued that English songs broadcast on French stations should be considered English programs. The station argued otherwise, adding that the songs were hits and that the station wanted to maintain the integrity of the work. The decision from the CBSC, a self-regulatory organization created by private broadcasters to deal with viewers or listener complaints, sided largely with the station, CHXX-FM. It agreed that as a French station, more lenient rules apply to the music it plays, even if the lyrics are in English. According to a CBSC news release, the panel suggested that in programming where the use of offensive words in either English or French is inevitable, broadcasters should acknowledge them by apologizing or advising people in advance in order to allow them to tune out if they prefer.
What's wrong with Quebec City? I mean, trash radio stations and now a curse word music station?
I don't know. This is really strange. You know, for people that don't know, here in Canada, we do have this Canadian Broadcast Standards Council, and it's an interesting organization because every single person who files an official complaint has their case heard. You know, none of them get tossed aside. They actually go through the process of reviewing and analyzing and making a decision on every single case that they receive a complaint about. So it's pretty neat that they do that. Some of the cases, though, I guess, seem a little trivial in some cases, but that's the system that's in place, and they do go through with the investigation and come up with their decision. So this was their decision on this particular issue.
Yeah, most of the time, though, the songs that are played are the ones that are cleaned out. They've either bleeped or modified the song slightly. So
yeah, they have usually if you see them in the station's computer, it's marked beside it, radio edit.
Yeah.
So it's a cleaned up version of the song.
Not sure where they got the fact that the F word in French is less of a problematic word than in English, but anyways.
Well, I've noticed that sometimes on TV shows and stuff, live shows, it does tend to slip out much more easily than it would on an English broadcast. So, I guess there is a different connotation to it probably in some way.
So there's a new era of jazz programming that begins at VOA. This is via Mike Terry in the UK and Glenn Hauser's World of Radio. The only problem is we're not really sure if it's on shortwave or not. But on June 5th, 2022, Voice of America launched a new jazz program in partnership with WDCB, a non-commercial radio station operated by the College of DuPage in Glen Ellyn, Illinois. Jazz from the Heart of America will be hosted by WDCB stations manager Dan Bindert and will feature a weekly hour-long radio program of jazz music of today and yesteryear to air on FM and shortwave radio stations, apparently, and that there's a discussion going on there, and VOA affiliates platforms around the world. VOA executive producer for music, June Sims, is very excited about the partnership. Jazz has long been a part of VOA's legacy, and we are thrilled to continue the tradition of Willis Conover and jazz programming with WDCB. VOA's interest in jazz dates back to VOA international jazz icon Willis Conover, affectionately known as America's ambassador of jazz, whose career spanned more than 4 decades since his popular show, Music USA, hit airwaves on January 6, 1955. Back then, jazz programming was an important tool showcasing America's talents and arts. Breaking through the Iron Curtain, Conover's program featured interviews and performances from world-famous American jazz artists such as Dizzy Gillespie, Duke Ellington, Sarah Vaughan, Louis Armstrong, and Ella Fitzgerald. Jazz has been a staple at VOA for decades, helping to tell America's story, explained acting VOA director Yolanda Lopez. I'm excited to continue this legacy working with WDCB in Chicago as they share great jazz music throughout the world. Jazz from the Heart of America was aired for the first time on Sunday, June 5th at 07 UTC. And as we said, we're not totally sure it's going to be on shortwave. There's kind of a discussion going on there.
Yeah, some people have been commenting on that. They've been trying to find the broadcast. They've been looking on the VOA website, which seems to have a lot of problems anyways. And they're having difficulty determining, is this program on shortwave or not? Is it being relayed just by other stations? What's the situation? The fact that it's working together with another radio station is kind of interesting.
Yep.
It's not being produced in-house at Voice of America. So hopefully we'll get some final word on this maybe for next week's show as to just where you can find this program if you want to listen to it on shortwave. Otherwise, you may have to track it down through other sources on the internet. Now, we have a little bit of an update. We talked about the FCC looking at these, what they call Franken FM stations that have been broadcasting on the old Channel 6 TV frequency, 87.75. And now there's been some talk that the FCC is going to consider expanding the FM radio band from 88 down to 82. So you'd have a whole bunch of new channels available between 82 and 88 megahertz. And Steve Camp from Sacramento and many others have commented on this. There have been a lot of comments flying around the internet on the possible expansion of the FM broadcast band in the United States, covering 82 to 88 megahertz. This is definitely not happening yet. It's going to be tabled for discussion at the FCC this summer. And I pulled a couple comments that appeared on Glenn Hauser's World of Radio IO group with some people commenting on this situation. Steve Luce in Houston, Texas says the biggest problem with expanding the FM band is that sales of radios have fallen off a cliff in favor of streaming devices. Any new FM stations would have to offer programming that was compelling enough for the public to actually purchase new radios. And I don't see that happening. Also, the average age of automobiles in the U.S. is now over 12 years, so it would take 25 to 30 years for most drivers to have the expanded FM band in their cars, assuming immediate availability of vehicles with that capability. In the meantime, newer technologies, including some not invented yet, would have advanced further beyond traditional radio broadcasting. And there is the financial issue that new stations in the 82 to 88 megahertz range would somehow have to remain viable, while the number of radios capable of receiving them will be tiny to non-existent for a number of years. Having their programming available as a streaming option might help, but doesn't that just point out what's killing radio in the first place? The time for a decision to add spectrum to the FM band was 30 years ago. It should have been expanded down to 76 megahertz as part of the digital TV transition. I would love to see this happen, but I'm afraid it's simply too little, too late with this latest proposal. And John Filiozzi of Half Moon, New York says, just what we need. More right-wing political ranting, a further slice and dice of rock music genres, another sports talk network, maybe a channel or two devoted entirely to sports betting. In other words, just more of the same. The trouble with FM radio is the product, its lowest common denominator stuff, no creativity, and all designed to service a huge debt load. Instead of the FCC treating FM like a vital medium instrumental in disseminating vital information and serving all types of audiences, it is acquiesced to commercial interests who treat it as just another commodity, whose primary reason to exist is to serve advertisers. In that regard, it has permitted commercial ownership to so overextend itself financially, product suffers as a result. Frankly, if the FCC wants to encourage an FM revival, it should reduce the number of licensees, not increase them, and reimpose concentration of control restrictions. More iHeartRadio isn't the solution.
That's definitely an interesting comment. You do tune around the FM band in every market, and Montreal's the same thing. I mean, it's the same over and over. I think the expansion is interesting, but the problem is I think the expansion should have been something a long time ago, not now. Radios, well, somebody going to go out and buy a new radio? I have a hard time seeing someone going to get a new radio just because, there's an expanded band. Although a lot of radios sold today have expanded bands included because they are sold on different markets around the world, just easier to make the radio already with an expanded band. Most of what people use probably don't have expanded bands. I agree totally with the fact that it's a cleanup we need in the FM band, not an expansion. We need to have rules that's going to say, okay, we have a top 40 radio station. Well, we are allowed one, and that's you. The other ones, if you want to have music, if you want to have stuff, different genres or different types of programming, let's diversify the FM band with what we hear, not expand it with the same crap.
Yeah, when only a few companies run the majority of the stations, though, Cumulus, iHeart, you're getting so much generic radio across the United States, for example. You go from city to city. We see it here in Canada with the Virgin radio stations, for example. There's just not a lot of variety out there. So a lot of things going against this expansion of the FM band succeeding at this point in time. So it's up for discussion this summer. We'll see where it leads to, and we'll obviously keep an eye on the story developing over the summer.
So what's happening with our sun? It's surprisingly quiet this week. We even had a full day without any sunspots. That hasn't happened in a long time. It's actually the only day this year that we didn't have a sunspot. And a new sunspot that is actually appearing just as today, June 10th, as we're recording, did a M flare. So that means that activity is picking up. So by the week ahead, we're probably going to have some more solar activity and kind of come back into that rising solar cycle that is rising faster than expected. Once again, a new report came out about this week. But to see what's happening with the sun, you know what? You have to turn on a radio and listen.
Bonjour, vous êtes à l'écoute du International Radio Report sur CKUT 90,3 FM à Montréal, une émission de 30 minutes tous les dimanches matins qui parle du merveilleux monde de la radio, autant international que local.
So we move across the ocean, and a couple of the Russian-Ukraine-related radio stories have surfaced. The first one, a major Russian radio station was hacked and started broadcasting Ukraine's national anthem and anti-war songs. This is by Bill Bostock from The Insider. A major Russian radio station was hacked and started broadcasting Ukrainian anthems and anti-war songs on Wednesday. The lunchtime news bulletin on Kommersant FM, the offshoot of the Kommersant newspaper, was abruptly cut off by the Ukrainian military anthem, "Oh, the Red Viburnum in the Meadow," BBC monitoring reporter Francis Scarr reported. And we have an actual clip of this, which we'll let you hear, of the Ukrainian national anthem being played over that FM station on Wednesday.
Згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці, запануємо ми, браття, у своїй сторонці, душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду.
The incident is the latest in a line of stunts where Russian media programs were interrupted with anti-war messages. In mid-March, an editor at the leading Russian state broadcaster Channel 1 stormed her network's live broadcast with signs that said, "Don't believe the propaganda," and "They are lying to you here." Last month, Russian TV broadcasts were hacked to display an anti-war message on the same day the country celebrated a national military festival. And also in May, 3 radio stations in St. Petersburg played Ukrainian and anti-war songs for more than 2 hours, according to the Russian outlet The Insider.
In a related news, there was intercepted audio that shows 2 Russian officers cursing out Putin and other commanders in charge of Ukraine invasion. This is by Joshua Zitzer, The Insider. Intercepted recording shows Russian military officers cursing out Russian President Vladimir Putin and other leaders in charge of the invasion of Ukraine. The audio recordings come from an unspecified Ukrainian intelligence agency, which intercepted the phone calls and were provided to the Radio Svoboda investigative project. Excerpts of the intercepted calls were published on YouTube on Monday. In the audio, a senior Russian officer can be heard bad-mouthing Russia's Minister of Defense Sergei Shoigu. Shoigu, a close ally of Putin, was one of the few Kremlin insiders who made the decision to invade Ukraine, Bloomberg reported in April. Shoigu is completely fucking incompetent, he says in the recording, just a fucking showman, and for fuck's sake, he adds. According to the investigation, the officer was Lieutenant Colonel Vladimirovich Vlasov. Vlasov also calls General Alexander Dvornikov, Russia's top commander in Ukraine, a complete and utter imbecile. We'll spare some more of the F word. The New York Times reported on Tuesday that Dvornikov hasn't been seen for 2 weeks, leading some U.S. officials to speculate that he may have been relieved of his post. Vlasov was speaking to a Russian military medic, Colonel Vitaly Kovtun, according to Radio Svoboda. Kovtun, per the recordings, referred to both Shoigu and Putin as idiots. Radio Svoboda contacted both men for comment. Kovtun took the phone call and responded by calling the journalist also an idiot and threatening to report him to Russia's FSB security agency. Vlasov answered the phone call but declined to offer a comment. He refused to answer follow-up calls, according to Radio Svoboda. So it seems there's a lot of unhappy people in the Russian military.
Yeah, it's got pretty nasty there. The language was a little colorful, to say the least.
Yes, I did soften it in the next few comments.
Yeah, a little, just to get the gist of it there, though, certainly within context to really show you how nasty this got.
So we have upcoming ham radio contests.
Yeah, we'll start off with the All Asian DX Contest, CW, 0100 June 18th to 2359 Zulu June 19th, organized by the Japan Amateur Radio League. It's the amateur bands 160 through 10 meters, and the mode is CW.
The IARU Region 1 50 megahertz contest, 14 hours Zulu June 18th to 14 Zulu June 19th, organized by the International Amateur Radio Union. The band is 50 megahertz, that's 6 meters, and the modes CW and SSB.
The West Virginia QSO Party, 1600 Zulu June 18th to 0400 Zulu June 19th, organized by the West Virginia State Amateur Radio Council, 80 through 10 meters, and it's an all-mode contest.
And this is a fun one, the ARRL Kids Day, 18 Zulu to 2359 Zulu June 18th, organized by the American Radio Relay League. Kids Day is designed to give on-the-air experience to young people and hopefully foster interest in getting a license of their own. It is also intended to give older hams a chance to share their station and love for amateur radio with their children. The band is 10 through 80 meters and it's SSB.
All right, we'll have links to all of those contests on our Facebook group, as well as links to some of these other stories we talked about today. So that will do it for us today. We thank you for tuning in. We'll be back again next Sunday morning with the next edition of our show, the International Radio Report, on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal. Have a great week, everybody.
Bye-bye.